Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to another player profile. We're going to take a look at a man who's been requested a couple of times, and that's Connor Blakely. I think he's quite a good fella to take a look at, and certainly a few requests have reflected that. So keep the requests coming too. Got a bit of a list, so I'll try to get round to them all throughout the pre-season. But Blakely, what do we know about him? Obviously, the youngster in WA, I haven't seen him play a great deal, to be honest. So by all means, Dockers fans or WA watchers of footy, feel free to get around and have some input on this one. I've done a bit of research, as I always do, but certainly welcome any feedback through the comments. I know there were some good ones with Brandon Ellis, a few knowledgeable Tigers fans getting involved there with some really good points who watched him week to week. So just because I'm the fella with the channel doesn't mean I'm an expert on every single club and watch footy and every single match every weekend. So feel free to get stuck into it on the comments. But back to Blakely, 33 games under his belt. By the time round one rolls around, he'll be 22 years old. 2015, just the one game, 37 points. 2016, 73.6 from his 15 games. And of course, last year is the real season that we're having a look at. 17 matches for an average of 89.2. Now, it is interesting to take a look at, whether that average truly reflects the season, and it is worth noting we should take out that 7 points he scored in round 19 before a shoulder injury, and if we take that out, that would bump him up to 94.3. So extremely good average from a bloke just playing his third season of AFL footy. I did note that he scored just 13 points in round 2. Didn't seem to have any reports in the match review of an injury, so I'm not exactly sure what happened there. I didn't see that game, but yeah, if you do know what happened there, if you just had a howler, let me know. But look, 94.3 for the season, extremely good. He's been long touted as one of the Dockers' most talented youngsters. Of course, they haven't got a stack of opportunity through Ross Lyon in seasons gone by, but we're now starting to see those come of age, given they are rebuilding. Did play a mixture of midfield and half-back. Now, I do believe eventually he'll be a midfielder, but certainly found his range off the half-back line, particularly late in the season, playing some extremely good matches. I mean, none more so than the 33 touches, 11 marks, 121 SuperCoach points in round 17. So that was all off the half-back flank. I think the majority of the first 12 or 13 rounds he played midfield, at least by what I've been reading, and then did make a move to the back line. $490K will be paying for him, which puts him at an extremely awkward price and a very, very tough one. And notably, despite the half-back performances, he is just a midfielder, which is tricky. I'll get into that in a second, but just dissecting a few more numbers, it's worth noting a real hot streak from round 6 to 18. You have a look at that, and all of a sudden, which a lot of people have outlined, is the real reason we're going to take a look at him, and that's because he averaged 110.1 points through that time. That's playing a couple of roles, of course, through the midfield and off the half-back flank. My initial thought with Blakely was, well, Fife, he burst back into the scene. Surely that's going to, Fife and Neil. Blakely, is he the third best? And then all of a sudden reading he did play a bit more backline than I realised. Will that be his role going forward? That'll be unveiled during the pre-season. So again, I think it's interesting to talk about him now, but that's something that we'll monitor over the next month and a half. But in terms of his selection, I must say I'm in the no camp. And the reasons being is just that price and the position we'll be picking him in the midfield. Now, I'm not sure if you saw my Stephen Cornelio podcast. It's probably in a similar vein to him. Two very talented youngsters. I'm not saying they won't have good seasons. I'm not saying they won't average 3 figures. I mean, Cornelio, of course, is a little more established, but Blakely, a big rap for him, and I think if you're having a SuperCoach draft team, he could be a fantastic selection. But if he was in our back line, available as a defender, you'd be jumping all over him. But the fact that $490K in your midfield is an enormous risk. Now, generally, most people are going the guns and rookies tactic. Sometimes you'll float the odd mid-pricer into it, and Blakely just falls extremely awkwardly. A touch under 500K, He's almost into that premium range, but he's not quite. He's only got 33 games next to his name. Talent to burn, reliability unknown. You know, real lack of background, real lack of history. Put simply, when we fork out coin, more often than not, we're paying big money and we're getting what we pay for. We are paying that coin because we're getting a gun. We know he's going to deliver. It's money well spent. And on the contrary, we might be going blokes between the 100k and 200k mark. You know, they might not be as reliable, but they've got money to burn, good job security, fantastic, they'll make us coin. And then there's that awkward little between generally 250 to 450,000. So of course Blakely's slightly above that mid-pricer, which I alluded to before, where you really weigh up the risk versus reward. How much coin can they make you while scoring good points? Because when we get to the mid-price range, there's different types of mid-prices, but it is generally a combination of they are making you money while holding down some good points in a, whether it be M6, M7 or a D4 or 5 or in the forward line likewise. So as we get closer to 250, well, then they can make you more K and the pressure to score points isn't as much. But if we're picking a guy between 450 to 500 who is very, very unlikely to be a keeper, then all of a sudden the pressure is on for him to score points and score points early, right from the get-go. So that's my main concern about him, is that I just don't see the point in his selection. I think the only point would be that you could tell your mates that you really identified a great youngster, and yes, he's averaged 100, he's averaged 103, he's going along nicely, he's risen to whatever it be, 544k. That's great. It's a good selection in a way, a good football selection, but is it a good SuperCoach selection? You know, this bloke probably most likely going to make you at best 80k. You know, I couldn't see him hitting the 600,000 mark or pushing that, could you? I mean, we're looking at making 60 to 80k in a perfect world. And is he going to average that 110? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I do love to pick out certain games and alter averages due to injury and pick out hot streaks within seasons. And it's all relevant, but he did have down games as well. That hot patch before he got injured was fantastic. But will that be repeated? That's where that risk comes into play, because he is young. You're taking a massive gamble, and I just think the reward and the margin for error is just so small. I think for it to be a reward and be a great selection would take a very, very good display from round one, hitting it nicely. You know, Blakely may average 105 for the season, but if he doesn't start knocking out tons from round one, if he just catches fire about round 4 or 5, then you've probably traded him out by around 3 or 4, because you've gone, geez, I can't afford to hold on to this bloke. He started okay, but not like a house on fire. So it puts the pressure on him to score points immediately. Very, very little room to move. So, and the risk, of course, is that he comes out and plays good footy, you know, scoring 80s and 90s, the odd 100. But after 6 or 7 rounds, he's averaging 91, 92, which is fine for a bloke of his standing in the game. He's had a real good game a couple of weeks back, but just sort of, you know, dropped back to the pack, scored a 77. All of a sudden, he's losing your money. He's not really contributing great points, considering some other options, not only around him, around some good price, mid prices, but just pay an extra 50 odd K and you'll find some even better options. So I've got some real concerns about that. I just think it would be a massive, massive risk, and the danger that you run is that it's a real wasted pick. And the odds are, I would say 99% sure that Blakely, if you were to start him, you're not going to finish with him. And I'm not sure why you pay nearly $500,000 for a bloke that's inevitably going to be traded out. I mean, if you have an extreme amount of confidence in Blakely to get to that 105 to 110 mark and just sit on your M7 or M8 throughout the season and you've saved yourself a trade, then all credit to you, I suppose. I mean, I don't share that confidence, but I mean, where do I see him going average-wise? I see a little bit of the Dan Hannaberys, the Trent Cotchins. You know, we've seen guys who have that mini breakout season, and you look at them and go, yeah, they're going to be players for the future. They'll be SuperCoach players for the future. And then you see not quite a plateau, but just a little step up. Sometimes you see the Paddy Dangerfield goes from averaging 80 odd to 118. And I think Dane Beams did similar. They go bang and just explode. But sometimes it's gradual. Sometimes it's little steps, 8 to 12 point increments. I think Hannabery 2013 to 2014, 95.3 was his breakout in 2013. Next season, you know, could mount a case, he could average 110. He went up, good season, averaged 101. So just a little improvement. Then he went bang. Trent Cotchin, similar, 2010, 78.9, played some really good games. Being a top pick, everyone expected massive things. And he did bump it up nicely, up to 100.6. But even still, is it enough? I mean, we had a similar debate with Josh Kelly last year. And, of course, he's a star and was well touted. Sometimes they explode, sometimes they don't. For Blakely, just in the team he's in and just being slightly conservative in expectation on younger players, I'd see him averaging in that low 100s. I could see him increasing his average by 6 to 10. And I'm talking about that 94.3 because we can't consider the 7 points that he got injured. So I'm looking at anywhere between average of 100 to about 104 would be my rough range. And I just don't think that's going to warrant you to select him because you're not keeping him there and he's not going to make you money. And at the end of the day, sometimes there's exceptions, but generally speaking, we're picking players to keep them all season long or to make us coin and coin quickly, and then we can, you know, work our way up to an upgrade target. So let me know your thoughts. I think Blakely is one of the more excitable youngsters out there, and a lot of people do talk about him, but I'm not so sure this is a season we should be picking him. But I would love to hear your thoughts on him. That'd be great. So feel free to comment away and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give the video a like, and I'll be certainly dishing out a few of these pretty regularly. Looking to do one every couple of days if I can. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you soon.